you can hear me, so Fatima, you can or cannot hear me. Oh, okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, okay. If there are, as if anybody, okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, good. So I'm going to start over. So inshallah, maybe the first, I need to make a note. I'll post to the group, or if somebody remembers to post, please, they can just ignore maybe the first 10 minutes of the recording. Anybody who's listening to the recording. So what I did was, because the material tends to be a little bit, I feel this stuff is a little bit, at least for me, I think the first time I did it was a little bit confusing. So, and Sheikh Faraz Rabbani, he really focuses on, he talks all about like charting it and making slides and charting it. And so I thought, subhanAllah, I should do more of that. And it actually, I think it makes it a lot clearer. So I made some new slides. So here's some of the material going back to the first slide. Here's some of the material we're going to cover. So purity, and then excuses for wudu, nullifiers of wudu, continued. We did some of that last time, but I felt the slides could have been a lot clearer. And then after wudu issues, what is prohibited without wudu, moving the mus-haff. There's some very basic, there's actually some major differences between some of the madhab and the Maliki madhab. So yeah, I tried to spell it out as much as I could, but you might, if you've studied another madhab, or maybe you grew up in a non-Maliki country, you might have learned some things that are very, very different. But alhamdulillah, there's some ease in the Maliki madhab, especially for sisters. Purity is up. Okay, so first thing is purity. So purity is actually of two types. So it's from actual physical filth, and that's physical filth is what you can see. You're going to be able to smell it. You should be able to, so perceived with at least one of the five senses. So it's going to be urine or feces or blood, corrupt blood. Corrupt blood meaning this is related to a woman's menses, and inshallah when we do menses I'll cover that inshallah. A vaginal discharge, and I know vaginal discharge, there's a difference between the schools, between the Hanafi ruling according to Imam Abu Hanifa, because he considers it pure, and between the dominant opinion in the Maliki school. So vaginal discharge. Sexual fluids, madi or mani. So madi is what comes out from the male or the female after foreplay, lustful thoughts, things like that. And so that's the lesser fluid. And then mani, which comes out from ejaculation, that would be in the male and the female. And then wadi, which also comes out, but it comes out from the male only. So that's it's from the prostate. So that's the left side, is making sure we don't have any physical filth on us. For example, when we're praying, when we're going for tawaf, so anything that would require us to be in purity, we would have to have purity of two things. So from physical filth, and then from ritual filth, and to have ritual purity. Ritual purity, so I think maybe that's a little bit easier. That's just being in wudu or being in ghusl. So being in wudu, so what breaks your wudu? I have a related slide, because there's actually there's several things that would break your wudu. And then ghusl is a little bit easier, so I listed it here, and then we'll go into more detail inshallah when we go to ghusl, and hopefully that will be the next class. So intercourse would break ghusl, ejaculation would break ghusl, menstruation or lokia. Lokia is postpartum bleeding, so after delivery. And inshallah when we do ghusl, I'll go over the details of what is actually meant by intercourse, and inshallah. Okay, so Purity is of two types, from physical filth and ritual purity. So physical filth is going to be perceived by one of the five senses, and then ritual is something that you can't see, but inshallah on the day of judgment it'll be visible. And so it's recommended for the believer to be in wudu, because the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that that's how he's going to know his ummah, are by the ghurr al-muhajjalin, is by the radiant limbs. The ghurr al-muhajjalin are the, if you have a horse with, I don't know if they're called piebald horses, but they have patches of white on their limbs. The Prophet ﷺ likened the believer and what will be radiant on the day of judgment to the horse that has those white patches on his or her limbs. And so may Allah make us from those people whose limbs are radiant. SubhanAllah, and yeah, to some extent I feel you can even see it on people's faces. People that are on wudu a lot and that avoid sin, and you can see their radiance. So imagine how much greater it will be on the day of judgment. And that's how Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he'll know his ummah. And in Sirah we were taught that ghusl was something they would practice in the other ummah, also in the other communities, like some of the Quraysh, the non-Muslim Quraysh, they would do ghusl, and so you see that in the Sirah, but they didn't have wudu. So wudu is, alhamdulillah, is a blessing for this ummah. So alhamdulillah, it's one of the gifts given to us. Ghusl they had, alhamdulillah. Okay. So now, what are the events that nullify your wudu? So going back, so this part, this right here, the ritual part that's split into wudu and ghusl, now I'm covering the wudu part of it. So what will actually break your wudu? Inshallah, this slide is clear. Hopefully you can see this. If you can't read it, let me know. Let's see if I can make it a little bit clearer. So events, or they called asbab, right? What are the things that will nullify your wudu? Touching, and I have a slide on that because the Malikis go into detail. So touching could be either yourself or another person. And touching so if you're touching another person, it's from somebody whom pleasure is typically derived, and it was felt or intended. And I'll go into more details because I have a specific slide for this. Apostasy, or somebody who's a murtad, somebody who leaves the deen. Allah protect us from that. And a new Muslim, they would actually need to do ghusl. So once they're certain that that they want to become Muslim, even if they haven't taken the Shahada in front of people, they can, their ghusl is actually valid if they did ghusl at that point. And then sleep. So sleep would break wudu. Sleep is of two types. It's either light or it's heavy. So light is where the way it's defined is that if you know how sometimes you do, for example, if I have a really good prayer, after the prayer I get really sleepy. I feel so relaxed, and if I can hear the sounds around me, then or if somebody called my name and I'm aware of that, then that means that's light sleep. So it wouldn't break my wudu. So it's recommended only to do wudu from light sleep if I slept for a long time and it was light, but it doesn't break wudu. Heavy, okay, the other definition of light sleep is if you have something in your hand, like if you're holding a subha, like a tasbih, what the Desis is called tasbih, and it fell from your hands and you were aware of that. If you were aware of that, it's considered light sleep, so it would not break your wudu. So just it falling from your hands is not considered heavy sleep, as long as you know that it fell from your hands. Because the idea is that something, because the reason that the Malikis define it this way is that if it's heavy sleep, meaning you're not aware of the sounds around you, or if something fell from your hands, you wouldn't be aware of it, then somebody might pass wind, and they're not even aware of it. So it's not the sleep itself, but it's what can occur during sleep that would break one's wudu. And so that's why you're going to get into different definitions depending on what Sunni school you follow. So this is how the Malikis define it. And then flatulence, passing wind, would break wudu. And passing of filth, right? So it's the passing of filth, right? Because if somebody could wash, they use the restroom and the filth actually came out, and they actually have no filth on them, but now they're in a state of ritual impurity. So they're pure from physical filth because they wash themselves, but they're not pure from ritual impurity. So the passing of the filth. So it's an actual event without actually having anything on you, because you could have washed it off. Inshallah, this is clear. I'll move to the next slide if this is clear. Okay, I'm actually going to skip this for now. I'm going to go back to those. I'm going to move the order of that. Okay, touching. So touching could be you're touching another person. If you're touching, so somebody who touches someone from whom pleasure is typically derived, and they touch that person and they intended pleasure, and it's somebody from whom pleasure is typically derived, and they intended pleasure, or pleasure was derived. Or pleasure was derived. Sorry, I need to edit it even more. SubhanAllah, I spent quite a bit of time on these slides, and then when you actually go to teach them, you realize, oh wait, I could actually change this and that. And so somebody from whom pleasure is typically derived, if you intended pleasure when you touch them, or you derive pleasure when you after touching them, or as you touch them, then that breaks wudu. And then absolutely, so somebody from whom pleasure is typically derived, they kiss each other lips to lips, even if no pleasure was intended or derived, it breaks your wudu. Why? Because the default is, they say that kissing lips to lips, generally there's going to be there is going to be pleasure, basically. So unless, the only exception to that would be if it's a kiss of pleasure on the cheeks, for example, husband kissing his wife because she's sick, or vice versa, and so he's sick and she kisses him on the lips. It's just of mercy, for example, or the husband's leaving to go out of town and he kisses her farewell, like a farewell kiss this is again on the lips. Then those are the exceptions to kissing lips to lips not breaking wudu. But otherwise, by default, kissing lips to lips actually breaks wudu, and that's what they mean by absolutely, whether you intended it or not, because intended it or not is conditional, right? That touching is conditional, but lips to lips kissing is unconditional. So it absolutely or unconditionally breaks your wudu, unless you have the exception of it being a mercy kiss or a farewell kiss. Is this clear, inshallah? So this is somebody whom pleasure is not typically derived from, would be, on like a very, very small girl, like 2, 3 years old, 4 years old. And then as far as touching oneself, so I broke it up into, according to gender, a man touching his penis with the palm or inside or side of the finger. So inside of the finger, side of the finger would break his wudu. Alhamdulillah, for women, alhamdulillah, there's a lot more ease. Sidi Khalil said it does not invalidate. She could touch herself anywhere and does not invalidate her wudu. What Sheikh Sadiq mentioned, and this is mentioned in some of the other books, some of the less detailed books than Mukhtasar Khalil, but he said it's a strong opinion that if she touches herself between the labial folds, it breaks her wudu. And Sidi Khalil does mention that as indicating that it's a less strong opinion. But the first one that he mentions, where touching herself anywhere does not invalidate her wudu, that is what seems to be definitely the stronger opinion according to Khalil. But Sheikh Sadiq mentioned there's another strong opinion, and you'll see this in some of the other books, that if she touches herself between the folds, like Ibn Ashram mentions some of these other opinions, it breaks her wudu. There is a third opinion, so this is weaker. If she touches her private parts anywhere, it breaks her wudu. This is definitely weaker, the third one, of the other two. So inshallah, this is clear. So I'll move to the next slide unless there is any questions. And sometimes I apologize, I'll sometimes I'll say I'll do this or I'll send you this, and if for some reason I haven't, please feel free to remind me. Okay, so moving on with sleep. So I actually made a separate slide for sleep, just to make it even clearer. MashaAllah, having studied with Sheikh Faraz Rabbani for so many years, MashaAllah, his slides are amazing, and he used to teach at Sunni Path. I think this was, 11, 12 years ago was when I took some classes with him on Sunni Path. Before Seekers Hub, and I was just amazed at how beautifully they did their slides. So sleep, again, heavy or light. Heavy nullifies wudu. Not hearing someone if they called you or something fell from your hands, you would not notice it. And then light, if criteria of heavy sleep not met, right? So it does not nullify your wudu. And again, if for an extended period, then it is recommended, meaning not required. So anytime the ulama say recommended, know that it's not required. So it's recommended to perform wudu. So that's just okay. Doubt. So the Maliki is a little bit stricter than I know some of the other madhahib about doubt breaking wudu. But what is doubt? So doubt is 50-50. I'm in wudu, I'm not in wudu. I did wudu, I didn't do wudu. So it's 50-50. So if it's 70-30, right, you don't call it doubt according to fiqh, right? It could be doubt. You would call it doubt in the language like shak. But in fiqh, what's called, meaning istilahan, so the technical term would be, the meaning is 50-50. Even though, sometimes they use shak, just the air, in the language, and they could mean more than 50-50 or less than 50-50, but that is not considered. So doubt is 50-50, obviously, or more, right? 50-50 or more. Okay, and then I broke it up into, you have certainty about performing wudu and doubt about losing it. So you're sure you had wudu. And now you're 50-50. I have wudu, I don't have wudu. And you have to be really careful about shaitan not getting in there and making you think it's 50-50. And if you're getting these doubts, meaning if somebody has doubt about Taharah, so they're getting these doubts a few days in a row, and it's about the same issue, meaning Taharah, or doubt about prayer, breaking their prayer or not. So if they're having doubt about Taharah, about purity, then they're considered somebody who has doubts about purity, and they have to ignore their doubts. So they're given a completely different ruling. So in this case, they would have to ignore their doubts, which is that last box here. The one with constant doubts. It's called a mustankih in Arabic. Mustankih, somebody who's constantly afflicted with doubts. So that person has a totally different ruling. So they're not being addressed here in these first three boxes, right? So if you're somebody who's in box 4, then ignore the first 3. You would ignore these first 3 boxes. Okay, so assuming you're not the one from box 4, you're from one of these boxes, and it's really 50-50, and just be careful about shaitan playing with you. So you had certainty about performing wudu, and you had doubt about losing it. In this case, it would break your wudu. And then box 2, certainty about performing it and losing it, but doubt about which occurred first. So I know I did wudu and I know I lost it, but did I lose it first and then do wudu, or did I do wudu and then lose it? Right? You're not, that's the 50-50. And so if you're not from person who would come into box 4, the second box would lose, you would lose your wudu. So if you're not the mustankih, then you would lose your wudu, because it's 50-50. Okay, then this point, sorry, it's a little bit long, but I just wanted to make it really clear. If you have doubt about wudu being nullified, so you have doubt about 50-50 again, about whether you have wudu or not, but you regain certainty later, your wudu is valid. Your wudu is valid. The same ruling is given about doubt about wudu in prayer. But if you're in the prayer, you actually have to complete your prayer if the doubt occurs in the prayer. So in the prayer, even if it's 50-50, even if you're the one who's not from box 4, you have to complete your prayer. Because shaitan comes and there's a hadith about he blows in the buttocks, and so that obviously is going to cause waswasa. So he does this during wudu, during the prayer. You know, there's the shaitan of the prayer. That's his job, is to cause waswasa in the prayer. And I was just telling, I do a young adults. I can't say children anymore because they're adults. The girls are adults now. And so I was telling them that, notice how, when we're praying, there's thoughts that don't come to us outside of the prayer that will come to us in the prayer. And they're like, yeah. And where so he comes and he's like, remember this and remember that, and all those, just things that one's not thinking of, subhanAllah. So, and so because of his extra vigilance, I think he's called Khanzabib, and they even have a name, the shaitan for the prayer, a'udhu billah, and it's walahan for wudu. There's a specific shaitan for the wudu. I think Sheikh Hamza was telling us that Abd al-Hajj would recite, how much was it? It was a quarter of a juz in wudu. And I was like, subhanAllah, people like that are protected from these whisperings. So Allah make us from those people who are protected from these whisperings, especially in this day and age. And and also we have to be extra vigilant, because shaitan actually runs away when the adhan is called. And so because we're in a land where there is no adhan, it's we just have to do a little bit more to make sure that we're not getting these wasawis. And I recite actually Ayatul Kursi more often than I used to, and I do more Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas a lot more, subhanallah. And there's I think that dua that somebody had posted the video of the sheikh who looks like actually Murad Abdul Hajj, but he's not Murad Abdul Hajj, who talked about placing your right hand on your heart and reciting the dhikr, and the dhikr that's mentioned in some of the fiqh books. If anyone does not have that, if they want it, just let me know. Or if anybody has it and they want to post it to the group again, maybe they can do that. It's basically several names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and an ayah of the Quran, and they've been put together in a dhikr. And this dhikr is mujarrab. Mujarrab means it's been tested and tried. Not tested, but it's been known to remove doubt in the heart. So that helps. That really helps, mashallah. Okay, let's see. Maybe I'll do this. What's prohibited without wudu? Tawaf around the Kaaba, prayer, right? Sajda of tilawa, prostration of recitation. There's 11 in the Maliki school. There's 11 in the Maliki school. And not the last three, which are in Juz Amma, the Malikis wouldn't, they don't consider those. So, for example, if you're a student of knowledge and you're reciting Quran or you're reciting Quran and you're on your cycle, um, if you get to one of the 11, i.e. the ones that are not in the last juz, because you don't have wudu, since you don't have wusul, you would not recite those. And then entering a masjid, and this is according to all four madhahib. We had looked into this because when I was in Syria, there were some people that are actually entering the madhahib, and there were some teachers. They weren't fiqh teachers, which is important to. It's an important note. There were some tajweed teachers, and unfortunately, people were taking fiqh rulings from tajweed teachers, which is a problem. Who were telling these sisters, "Oh, you're only going to be here for so long, and your cycle is so, is going to be so long. It could be like, for some people, it's more than a third of their life while they're menstruating. So if they're getting it every 28 days, and they're, they go for 12, 13 days, it's actually almost half." So there were sisters coming into the masjid, and they were on their cycle. And so entering a masjid, according to all the four madhahib, you can't do that. Now passing through, and there's a difference in the madhahib, and like the Shafis have a way to do it: enter through one door, exit. You have to exit through another door, and and they allow that, but that's just passing through. So. And then touching a mus-haff. A mus-haff meaning Quran only. So the Malikis actually, alhamdulillah, I know it's a little bit different in the Hanafi. So you can't, if you're not a student or a teacher, so if it's not for a dars or you're not reviewing at home, it's just for like you're doing a Quran khatam, and it's just for ibadah, it's just for devotion. Then you can't even touch it with a stick, nor a glove, nor a cloth, nor you can't move it on a pillow. And if it's on a table, don't move the table, but you can touch the table. And if it's on a coin, it's going to be such a small amount. And it just seems like such bad adab because sometimes coins get thrown on the floor, but it's technically permitted to touch that coin. So, like one of my teachers says, he says, don't learn adab from fiqh books, right? So, because they might say something's permitted, but it's actually really, really bad adab. So, technically, it's permitted. One may not give it to a non-Muslim. Again, the yellow is all mus-haff, so it's Quran only. So, one may not give it to a non-Muslim. And then the one who gives it to a child, the sin is upon the adult who gave it to the child, because the child does not have sin. So in the Maliki, the child who is mumayyiz, they can distinguish between right and wrong, and they're actually doing good deeds. The Maliki opinion is that they actually get reward for the good deeds, alhamdulillah. But they have no sin upon them, alhamdulillah. So the sin would be upon the adult. Did somebody ask a question? It came up and then it went down. I didn't pay attention to who that. What if the masjid was not built with the intention of being a masjid? If it was not built, then it wouldn't be called a masjid. Then it would be community center or like musalla. So the important thing is, if they built it with the intention of a masjid, and sometimes what they'll do is they kind of know that a certain area of the community center is the masjid, then you would not go there. And And you can't go there. Like in Akhbari, he says, وَلَا يَجُوزُ فِعْلُ حَتَّى يَعْلَمَ حُكْمُ الْإِلَهِ بِالسُّؤَالِ الْعُلَمَاءِ وَلَا يَجُوزُ الْفِعْلُ حَتَّى يَعْلَمَ حُكْمُ الْإِلَهِ بِالسُّؤَالِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. So وَلَا يَجُوزُ فِعْلُ حَتَّى يَعْلَمَ حُكْمُ الْإِلَهِ بِالسُّؤَالِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. It's not permitted to do something until you know one knows the ruling of it. Bisu'al al-ulama, asking the scholars. So if we don't know, then we need to ask the scholars. So if some doesn't, so in this case, we know the ruling. We know that we can't enter a masjid. But if one doesn't know it's a masjid or not, then one doesn't enter it. And one asks and says, okay, is this a masjid or not? So it's upon us to ask. And because generally that's what I found is they'll say that the musalla area is the only part that they intended to be a masjid. You know, that's the house of Allah. It's going to have the angels there. It's going to be makruh to talk about the dunya in that area. And there's some really strong hadith about speaking about the dunya in the masjid. And you know, a man a sahabi who came in, and I'm assuming he was a sahabi, came in and he was asking about his animal that had gotten lost, and the Prophet said, mashallah, some strong words, a very, you know, our gentle Prophet. And so obviously it would be displeasing to Allah, because he wouldn't be upset about anything except things that were displeasing to Allah. So one has to be careful about it. Sometimes they're making these announcements, and you know, and then okay, wearing a ta'weed. Ta'weed is it's for protection. You know, that it would have part of the Quran or all of it. If it's covered, it's permitted. And even if, and Khalil mentions this, even if a woman is on her cycle, she can wear it. People wear it for protection, and it's permitted. Ta'weed. Sometimes they have another name for it, or the basis call it ta'weez. It's ta'awud, like same word, same root as a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, because one's using it for ta'awud, for protection from Allah. And touching a tafsir or commentary is permitted. So, and it's basically what would be called a commentary. Is that, you know, what you have, is it called a commentary? I mean, it could be a very short commentary of the Quran, then it's permitted. So inshallah this is clear. I'll move to the next slide. Okay, moving the mus-haff without wudu. So, so if you're carrying it and there's other stuff, right? Because this previous slide, it's touching the mus-haff only, right? So, so here, if you're carrying it, like you're carrying it in your purse, you have other stuff with you. So subhanAllah, intention is really important. If you're intending to carry the mus-haff only, then it would not be permitted, even if there's other stuff there in your bag. If you're intending the mus-haff and you're intending other stuff, to carry other stuff with it, then there's two strong opinions, meaning is that there's one opinion permits it and the other opinion does not permit it. That's what that middle slide means. If you're intending the other belongings and the mus-haff happens to be there, the stronger opinion is that it's permitted. Right, that's the stronger opinion, and there's a weaker opinion that wouldn't be. Is this clear, inshallah? So this is not for class. This is not for not a student of knowledge, but this is just carrying it with other belongings, period. Okay, more on, there's a little bit of overlap from the other slide, but I just wanted to go over it in as much detail as I could. So Quran on a coin, we said earlier that it's fine. Also, a teacher, a student, even if it's they're touching their entire mus-haff, if it's to and from class, during class, women in their cycle, even if they're at home and they're opening the mus-haff and they're studying from it, it would be permitted. Obviously, if they are someone who can do wudu, it would be recommended for them to be in wudu. And also, you get out of the difference of opinion from the, between the madhahib, between the schools of thought. But technically, it's permissible if you're a teacher, if you're a student, in class, back and forth from class. If you take a break in the class, then don't touch it, because then the permissibility is not there, because there's no reason to touch it. Then it would go back to you can't even touch it with a stick, you can't even touch it with a pillow, you can't even touch it with a glove, right? So alhamdulillah, there's a lot of leeway for the student or teacher. So inshallah, the left side is clear. So, and then impermissible, moving it on a pillow, or a stick, or student or teacher touches it during a break, which I mentioned, or the one in greater ritual impurity. So the one who's in greater ritual impurity, they can actually take a shower anytime, right, and get out of it. So they're not like the woman in menses. So a woman once she's in her cycle, and her cycle ends, and she's able to do ghusl, then she needs to do ghusl before she recites Quran or she touches it. Then the ruling changes because she's able to do ghusl. Inshallah, this is clear. But sometimes because it's a lot stricter in some of the other madhahib, one has to, if one wants to have adab, then just be extra careful. It's not a bad thing because, there's a hadith about, address people with what they are, what they're familiar with and what they know, because do you want that they disbelieve in Allah and His Messenger? I believe Sayyidina Ali quotes it, and I'm not sure if it goes back to the Prophet ﷺ or not, but so sometimes I'm careful about certain things, just to, as they say, not freak people out. Okay, back to... Okay, here. What does not nullify wudu? Okay, touching one's anal opening or man for his testicles, touching a girl, one who is not typically desired, right? So excludes all the filth, all the stuff that's going on now. So somebody who's, they say typically who's less than 5 or 6 years old. And that's why, I feel it's really important. A lot of times, sometimes I'll notice that, well, one, the clothes they make, even for very little girls, like they'll make sleeveless clothes or they'll make rounder, lower necks. And they won't do that for boys, like 2, 3 years, 4 or 5 years of age or up. And it's so subtle that they're getting girls used to wearing less. And it happens from such a young age. And I saw a picture of a sister who had posted her children's pictures, which is not a good idea because the evil eye and all that. It's not a good idea to do that. And I noticed the girl, they were both wearing white, and I noticed the girl was wearing, they were small kids, she was wearing sleeveless and a dress, and he was in that regular collar shirt, and he had a lot more covered. And I was like, it's so subtle, subhanAllah, how that's done. And and it's harder to then reprogram oneself and say, okay, well, now I have to wear longer sleeves. Whereas sometimes from the boys, it's going to be easier because they were wearing that from the beginning, and they were wearing loose clothing from the beginning. And so just to be aware of that if one has girls. Okay, injections, suppositories, and inserting one's finger in one of the 2 exits, all of that doesn't break wudu, alhamdulillah. Vomiting even a mouthful, because I know there's a difference between the schools. It does not break wudu. Eating camel meat, because that was abrogated according to the Malikis. Slaughtering does not break wudu. Hijama, wet cupping, does not break your wudu. So flowing blood would not break your wudu. From, I mean, it's not, because it's not menstruation. Venous section, it's a type of, they cut the vein, and it's a type of treatment. It does not break wudu. Laughing does not break wudu, whether you're in prayer or not. I mean, it would break the prayer if one laughs. Allah protect us from that. But it wouldn't break the wudu. Okay. I think we did all of these, right? Any questions? And I think if I hadn't been taught this for over 20 years, I probably wouldn't have gone into so much detail. But then after, subhanAllah, just studying this a few times and being taught this several times, you realize, subhanAllah, there's just so much. It comes up for us so often in our lives that it's just really important to go over it in a lot of detail. And so I added a little bit more detail just in the hopes that inshallah it's clear. So unless there's any questions, I'm going to end class. Jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ahlu jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ahlu jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ahlu subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wassalamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. They say, I was just thinking about the story, some of the wudu stories, and the wa'iyaki, the sahabi who passed wind in wudu, in prayer. And if I remember the story correctly, they all laughed. And the Prophet ﷺ told them after the prayer to all go and do wudu. SubhanAllah. And just one of the interpretations of that, from what I remember, is that just to veil the Sahabi who had passed wind, that's why the Prophet ﷺ said that. Allahu A'lam. SubhanAllah, it's just so beautiful. I mean, imagine how embarrassing that would be, praying behind the Prophet ﷺ, and it's not like it's silent, but it's, astaghfirullah. And then everybody laughs, and whoever laughs in the prayer, astaghfirullah, in the masjid of the Prophet. But mashallah, there are, they did things, they did the things that they did, and we benefit from that. And the Sahaba are all udul. That's like a technical term. They're considered all of them are considered just. And so if they ever narrate, if they narrate, if there's a hadith that comes from them, like in the science of hadith, they don't look into the character. Could this person be a liar? Could they have these kinds of things? They just like Sahabi. Once that's confirmed, then he's adl, he's just, and subhanallah. And that's all of them, mashallah. It's just really amazing. Because one of the scholars was saying, he was saying that if you look at the ayahs of the Quran, if you look at the description of how Allah Ta'ala describes how the Prophet ﷺ purified them versus how we get purified, he said, I'll quote the ayah really quickly and then we'll stop. He said for the Sahaba, the Prophet ﷺ, he actually, it's in Juz 2. See, it's the second page of Juz 2. It's so beautiful. It's like once you read that, I'm just pulling up the ayah, you just realize the difference between us and them. That, hang on, let me find it really quick. That find it. Okay, here it is. It's ayah 159 on page 23 of the mus-haff. Um, كما أرسلنا فيكم رسولا منكم يتلو عليكم آياتنا, recites upon you our verses. ويزكيكم, and he purifies you. Right, so after reciting the ayahs, he purifies you. So this is, and this Azhari scholar was saying that, so the purification of the Sahaba happened first, before what? وَيُعَلِّمُكُم, before they were taught. So if you think of, what was going on in Mecca and all the tribulation they went through, that was their purification. And the Prophet ﷺ just looking at them was purification. So, I mean, there were, even the ones that didn't go through all the tribulation, and but just him looking at them. So he recites ayahs, وَيُزَكِّيكُم, purify them, وَيُعَلِّمُكُم, and then the teaching comes. وَيُعَلِّمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, and teaching them the book, وَالْحِكْمَةِ. And one of the other words that's used, one of the meanings of hikmah is the sunnah. And then the last part of the ayah is وَيُعَلِّمُكُم مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ, and teaching all of you ma'lam, whatever you all didn't know. Right? So it's reciting ayahs, purification, and then the teaching. And the wisdom, which one of the meanings of wisdom is sunnah, وَيُعَلِّمُكُم, and then ending with وَيُعَلِّمُكُم مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ, and teaching you all that you don't know. So he said this was the reality of the Sahaba. But then he said the reality of everybody else, including us and all the other humans that are non-prophets, is the reality of what Sayyidina Ibrahim said in Surah Al-Baqarah. And it's basically very, this other ayah is very similar to the one I just recited, except the order is reversed. So look at this. So this is our reality. This is something to be aware of, and I've seen this in my life. Alladina, let's see, where is it? So it's page 20 of the mus-haff. So it's the second last page of the first juz, where Sayyidina Ibrahim and Sayyidina Ismail make dua, and they say, رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. And then they make dua, oh Allah, make us Muslims, and then they make dua, and the Prophet ﷺ mentions the dua, رَبَّنَا وَبَعْثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا, like send amongst them a prophet. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ. Now pay attention to this order. يَتْلُو, a prophet that recites upon them your verses. Okay, right? And in the other ayah, after reciting your verses, what came is the purification, right? But for us, the Sheikh was saying the purification doesn't come in the second stage. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ, and he teaches them the book, and the hikmah, and the wisdom, which another meaning of wisdom is sunnah. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. So the purification comes last in this ayah, and the Shaykh was saying this is our reality, and the reality of all the non-prophets other than the Sahaba. But the reality of the Sahaba is after the recitation of the ayahs, they were getting purified, and then the teaching was happening, and so it makes them very different from us. And I was like, subhanallah. And the Prophet ﷺ just looking at them just once, subhanallah, with all the tajalliyat and all the nur sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he had. SubhanAllah. So I was just like, SubhanAllah, this is really beautiful. Whenever I get these gems, I write them in my mus-haff on the side just for reality. And I've seen this, that, for a while, like I was just like learning, being taught. And there was purification, but I noticed like a lot more purification that came after some of the major learning. And when he was saying this, I was like, SubhanAllah, this is one of the things that makes us different from the Sahaba. SubhanAllah. Okay, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ma huwa ahlu. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ma huwa ahlu. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ahlu. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. So What I'm probably going to do is what I really, really want to do is the fiqh of how to wash a dead body and and everything related to it according to the Maliki school. So I did it actually recently, an SBIA, but according to the Hanafi school, because it was, that was requested by a group. And I realized that, it's so important and we really, really need to do that. Alhamdulillah, and I've been blessed to assist some sisters in that. And there's stuff that comes up during the ghusl, and then things like, things, for example, that might be in our culture, like condolences. When do you do condolences? It's actually makruh after the first 3 days. What's recommended to do in terms of feeding, who's supposed to do the feeding, and how do you do the janazah prayer, and some of the benefits of the janazah prayer. What are you supposed to do at the grave after the burial? Just in general, visiting the graves, things like that. And there's some just amazing stories also. So what we'll probably do is we'll probably do the regular ghusl. We'll cover that inshallah again. And I'm trying to figure out how to do that, because I'm really wanting to do all the fiqh related to dying and the deceased and the graveyard before Ramadan. So make dua that it gets facilitated, because we don't know when death is going to come for someone, or they're somebody whom they love, and they should know. Everybody should know how to do ghusl, so that they're not leaving it to other people. Inshallah. Okay, so inshallah, make dua that Allah facilitates. I'm actually working on a brochure for this purpose, and inshallah, once that's done, at least in draft form, like the fasting Ramadan brochure, then we can actually do those sessions, so you actually have something in front of you, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.